Recently, a video has been released to the public which shows Albuquerque police officers murdering a man in cold blood for illegally camping. This man, which was schizophrenic, obviously had no intention of hurting these police officers. On the contrary, this man looks as if he is simply attempting to protect himself from visually fierce militarized thugs. Whether this man had a history of crime is irrelevant. We drastically need to address the growing police state that has occupied the United States. To the citizens of Albuquerque, and to the Albuquerque Police Department, we are anonymous. After the abnormally high number of fatal shootings by the Albuquerque Police Department since 2010, our attention and support for the citizens of Albuquerque has peaked. We are here in solidarity with the Albuquerque citizens and to help bring justice that is long overdue. Members of the Albuquerque community, families of APD victims, and community organizations formulated the following 14 demands for the Albuquerque City Council and Albuquerque Police Department. We call upon you to hold the appropriate authorities accountable, informing them that they must incorporate these demands into the United States as DOJ's comprehensive plan for APD sustainable reform. We demand an immediate takeover of APD by the DOJ. The recent outrageous and disgraceful shooting of James Boyd by the APD clearly demonstrates that the Chief of Police and his subordinate commanders are unable or unwilling to do anything to address the ongoing excessive use of force and disregard for human life by APD officers. It is simply imperative that the DOJ step in immediately and assume control of APD in order to prevent further abuses. Whether by consent decree, some type of federal receivership or otherwise, immediate DOJ intervention is critical. We demand authentic and verified citizen oversight of APD to include the authority over hiring and firing, and disciplines, of APD leadership and officers. Once again, the Chief of Police and his subordinate commanders have demonstrated a complete lack of authority and ability in supervising, and where necessary disciplining and/or dismissing officers who continue to perpetrate abuses of force. Over the last several years, officers have learned that they are free to utilize excessive use of force and that their actions will always be determined justifiable. We demand the immediate arrest of the officers who participated in the shooting and killing of James Boyd, particularly the two identified shooters. These officers are entitled to the same constitutional protections we all have, but they must be arrested and charged just as we ordinary citizens would have been, had we surrounded and shot Mr. Boyd. We demand the immediate termination of Chief Eaton, despite his assurances of appropriate discipline if and when necessary, which he promised when he was appointed. The chief has clearly shown that his tenure as police chief is simply going to be more of the same business as usual when it comes down to justifying actions of his officers. Different name, different face, same result. We further demand indictments of all officers who have been guilty of violating citizen rights. It is time to bring charges against all officers who have engaged in excessive use of force cases over the last several years and let them face the same charges and prosecution we would be facing. Officers cannot be allowed to escape above the law simply because they wear a badge. In fact, they should be held to a higher standard, not a lesser, more lenient standard. We demand the demilitarization of APD. We have become dismayed and disgusted with the new mode the APD has undergone. These officers appear to enjoy strutting about in their green power, and their modern tactical weapons including high-powered rifles, and assault-type, almost military-looking uniforms, including helmets and bulletproof vests. They seem to enjoy the opportunity to roll out their armed assault vehicles. One recent event involved an officer who arrived late at a police scene and exclaimed that he was sorry he arrived late for he wished to be able to try out his new assault rifle. We demand an increase of funding for social services including substance abuse prevention and treatment, preventing homelessness, and an acknowledgement that each of us is entitled to housing, shelter, and the peaceful enjoyment of our city. A redirection of funding from police weaponry and tactical training to social services will certainly go a long way in reducing the confrontations between the police and the homeless in our city. Similarly, Substance abuse treatment will reduce the crime rate, which leads to violent confrontations. We demand a new vigorous investigation of the APD hiring practices. We have learned that APD recently lowered minimum standards for new officers and is not requiring lateral transfers to undergo background checks and psychological exams. This has resulted in a rash of reject officers from other jurisdictions finding a home in APD. There was a reason these rejects were let go by their departments. How can we believe they will no longer be problematic officers? Number 9. We demand that access to deadly weapons by APD officers be dramatically reduced. As mentioned in demand number 6, there is too much emphasis on more modern, more tactical weapons. Officers place more and more emphasis on newer, more deadly weapons. This has resulted in more officer-involved shootings and overkill where the victims are not just shot once or twice but multiple shots. Number 10. We demand authentic and verifiable policing that puts positive police-community relationships ahead of violent confrontation. Clearly, officers and citizens are both better served and safer when they can work together in collaborative rather than a confrontational fashion. What has happened to community-based policing? This is a term we never hear anymore. Number 11. We demand a non-police emergency response of trained mental health professionals and crisis negotiators who can be called upon at all encounters that carry the potential for possible use of deadly force, especially in situations like that which led to the killing of James Boyd. There was plenty of time to bring in trained crisis intervention personnel to help defuse rather than escalate the situation. Number 12. We call upon those police officers who recognize the problem of the police violence to publicly support these demands. In spite of the many problem officers within APD, we acknowledge those officers who are just as disgusted as we are with the outrage which have occurred. We call upon these officers to stand up and be counted in taking a stand for sound and rational police practices designed to serve and protect the citizens. Number 13. We demand that the City Council adopt the Police Oversight Task Force's recommendations for police oversight immediately and without amendment or alteration. These recommendations are well thought out and reasoned approaches to the problems we are facing. These recommendations must not be diluted or watered down so that they become ineffective. Number 14. We demand immediate and ongoing medical evaluation of all APD officers to determine their mental fitness to carry a weapon and serve as a police officer. As mentioned in demand number 8, we insist that APD reinstate previous screening procedures designed to identify and weed out potentially problematic officers. These procedures are already in place. They have not been enforced during the last few years. In an effort to support the citizens of Albuquerque, we are providing a place for people to gather, discuss, and to take action online. The link for that discussion is in the description of this video. That, when will we say no more? How many more citizens will be murdered? Naturally, the APD will attempt to label Anonymous as a terrorist organization for our demands of justice. But the question has to be asked. Who do we terrorize? Is it not a growing police state that terrorizes its own citizens? We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. To the APD, it is already too late to expect us.